So for today, I want to not only tell you what absolute value means, like, yeah, the answer to this is 5. But why is it 5? Because the question with absolute value bars is really saying, how far is this from 0? Or if it says this, it's saying, how far is this from 0? How far is negative 10 from 0? 10. That's why it always comes out positive. Have you ever noticed the answers always come out positive in absolute values? It's because they're a distance. And what's the smallest distance you could ever be from something? How far are you from this classroom? You're 0 feet away from this classroom. You're in it already. Okay, so the smallest distance is 0. Could you be negative 5 feet from this classroom? Nope. The smallest absolute value there is a 0. So what's the absolute value of 0? 0. Because it's how far away is 0 from 0. And it is 0 away from 0. All right, how could I ever get a negative answer then over on the right side if I put another negative out in front of it? Because in that context, this negative means opposite of. And so you put a negative on the answer. So here's one that's tricky. Absolute value of 6 minus 4, absolute value with a negative in front of it. Well, then you'd start in here, and what is 6 minus 4? That's easy. What is that? 2. And then it's the absolute value of 2, which is 2. But then this means opposite of that. So what's the final answer? Negative 2. So if there's a negative on the outside, then the answer will be negative. That's the only way you'll ever get a negative answer. Because absolute value bars are a distance, and if you put a negative outside, that's the opposite of that distance.
But then you're negative 2.
You're the opposite of the distance. This was the distance. If the distance is 2, this is the opposite of that distance. I know the distance thing gets confusing, but I'm just trying to say, instead of just blindly saying you'll never get a negative answer, you can if you put a negative in front, and that kind of throws off the whole distance thing. All right, so here's a more complicated one that's more like what you're going to have to do. Everybody write that one down. Copy that problem. Now, from what I just said a second ago, the distance here is 12. Remember, this is the distance. It comes out positive. It has to. But distances are always positive. The smallest distance there is 0. So that's the distance. And the question is, I got to figure out a number that'll work here so that that number, when you take away 8, comes out to 12. And I'm sure some of you can think of an answer. It's like a number that's, fairly big, so that when you take away 8, you get 12. Can anybody think of what x has to be? What? 20? Just 20? 20. 20 minus 8 is 12. Perfect. We've got one of the answers. I'd be like, one of the answers. There's another answer? Why? Because this could also come out to negative 12. Because you can absolute value it, right? So what's the other answer? 20 is one of them. What's the other answer? What else would work?
Negative 4.
Negative 4 is correct. Nice job. Because then I'd have negative 12 inside, and then I'd have absolute value of that makes 12. So there's two answers. X equaled 20 and x equaled negative 4. Now that was kind of tricky, so we have a shortcut. This shortcut is, I think you're going to like it. Instead of trying to guess and check numbers, which is kind of hard, this way I'm about to show you, I call it doing the splits. If I actually physically did the splits right now, it would not end well. I am not flexible enough to do that. But mathematically, to do the splits, I just have to say that what's in here can either be 12 or it could be negative 12. So what's x minus 8 is either 12 Or x minus 8 is negative 12. Copy that. X minus 8 is 12. Or x minus 8 is negative 12. And then they're just equations, and we've practiced solving these, and I think you're pretty good at them. You just start with adding 8. It'll be easy. I think you can all solve these two. You add 8, and you add 8, and you add 8, and you add 8, and you get two different answers. Because one of them is positive and one of them is negative. You don't have a card. Do you have it? Oh, there it is. Thanks, Megan. All right. So, Megan, can you tell me what'd you get on the right side here? This part. Yep. And how about the other side? Negative 12 plus 8. Got that?
I didn't do it yet.
Okay. So I know these are hard for some people, and this is one of the topics that we're studying for today is adding positive and negatives. I get it. Some people are like, okay, 12 and 8 makes 20. So is it 20? No. Is it negative 20? No. Is it 4? Do I actually subtract them? It's not 4 either. What is the right answer? Negative 4. So this is one of the most important little things you've got to get down is how to add positive and negative numbers together. So I have a great way, I think, you tell me if it's a great way, of doing this. Think of it as a battle between the negative forces and the positive forces. Do you get there's more negatives? So the answer's got to come out negative. And how much do the negative forces win by? How many more forces do they have? 4. That's why the answer is negative 4. Oh, cell phone? Goes in the backpack? Backpack, thank you. So this is negative 4. Why? Because this was bigger than this, so it wins. Do you know in the old days in war, it was pretty much whoever had more soldiers won. Just every time. If you had more soldiers and they had less soldiers, you were going to win. Okay? But then some cultures got different technologies, and some cultures had better weapons. And so all of a sudden, they could have a small force but still win. But math, it's simple. Whichever's bigger wins. So I ask you, what's bigger? The positive forces or the negative forces here? Positive. So it's going to win. So the answer is positive. And then how much more do they win by? How much more people do they have? So the answer is positive 2. I don't want you to think of these as adding or subtracting. I know that's hard because you're like, should I add them or subtract them? You don't. You combine them. And you see which has more. What if they're the same, though? What if it's like negative 8 and negative 7? Then they're on the same team. They're all on the negative team. So you got negative 8 and you got negative 7. Which one wins? Well, they're on the same team. They're all on the negative team. So this is just negative 15. They go together if they're all on the same team. Okay. So this is one of the topics that's on a little Schoology quiz that we have for today. And it's got 5 questions, one of which is something like this. And you'll have to go without a calculator. Does that come out positive or does that come out negative? Say it if you know it. Positive. And then positive, and then how much does it win by? The positive team. So the answer is positive 3. Okay? You got to get that down. And I know some of you have relied on calculators for too long, like a couple of years now, where you just go type in the answer on the calculator and it tells you. And so your brain has gotten weak on doing little things like that. It's actually real. I mean, in the real world, kids used to be better at memorizing phone numbers. You know why? Because they weren't in your phone. Like you had to know your friend's phone number to call them. Like right now, if I asked you what your best friend's phone number is, you probably don't know. You've probably heard it before, but you don't know because it's just there and you don't have to know it. The phone memorizes it for you. So we've gotten weak on memorizing little things like that. It's not like it matters that much, but just true. Kids in the old days would have like 4, 5, 6 of their friends' phone numbers memorized. I bet you don't have any because you don't have to. So if there are some people that think the humans are going to get really weak because it won't be too long and we'll have so much help from technology that we basically won't have to do anything except like walk from here to there. Technology will do everything. Like most of you guys learn how to drive. That's awesome. Your kids, they won't even learn how to drive. I know you probably think I'm crazy right now, but your kids, they won't learn how to drive. Because cars will drive themselves. Not kidding. You won't let your kid drive your car. You'd be like, are you kidding me? That thing's worth like 20 grand and you're not driving it. Let the computer drive it. Because the computers will be driving the cars by then. They already are. Right now, there's robo-taxi rides where you can just get into the car. There's no driver. Car drives itself. Happening in Phoenix and happening in San Francisco. Right now. Somebody probably just called an Uber and people freak out when the Uber comes up and there's no driver. And they're like, do I get in? Yep. You just get in and it knows where you want to go and it drives you there and it stops and you get out. It's crazy, but that's what's happening right now. So you can imagine you're not going to probably have kids for a while. I mean, it's possible, but you probably aren't going to have kids for a while. And then it's going to be like 16 years before those kids are old enough to drive, right? So we're talking like, for most of you, this is like 20 years from now. Kids will never need to learn to drive. You'll know how to drive. You'll be like, back when I was a kid, we had to all pass a test on how to drive. Your kids will be like, well, I don't want to drive anyways. I just get in the car and it takes me where I want to go. It's true. Not kidding. Okay, so this is something that you need to know how to do. Why? Because your first test has no calculators. You'll have to be able to do these simple things like this, like adding, subtracting. All right, so we got to make sure that you get how to do this. Let's do one more like that. -8 minus 3. Now, this teams thing I've been doing, I usually say which one wins, but these are on the same team. So what's the answer? -11. Okay, good. All right, here's another one of the really tough review questions. Do you know how to distribute? Just distribute that out and tell me the answer. There's 5 questions. That's the second one. 2x, keep going. Yep, that's all there is to it. It gets a little weirder if there's just a negative in the front of a parenthesis. Then can you just distribute the negative out? If I just had a negative there, do you get that I'd be able to just distribute the negative? You can do that. So then what would the answer be? Negative x, then what? Plus 4. Some people like to think of that as a -1, and then they times it. That works too. Okay, so that's distributing. And what else do we have to know for today? Here's another easy one. If I have a fraction, you have to solve things that have a fraction in them. Now, there's the easy way, and there's the hard way. Whenever you can, do math the easy way. So, the easy way, you start by timesing by 3. I know you could do something where you'd multiply by a fraction. That's the hard way. Here's the easy way. Everybody times both sides by 3. Do you see the times 3 and divide 3 cancel? So just times by the denominator. And then look, a small child can solve that problem. You just divide by 2 and you're done, right? So moral of the story, when you have a fraction to get rid of, multiply by that denominator. See that denominator there? Multiply by that. Final answer, x equals 15 over 2. Your elementary teacher would have said, ooh, that's improper. But I say, it's fine. You can leave your answer as 17 over 2. I don't want to be a slave of, if I hear chairs scraping upstairs, that we're instantly dismissed. Remind me, help me, when do we leave for lunch? 30 what? 43?
Well, yesterday we left.
So those chairs are scraping really early. Hold on just a second, I'm gonna pause. All right, so I would be fine with 15 over 2. Yes, Mrs. Flutie from first grade, or no, it probably wouldn't have been first grade, probably been like third grade, would have told you this was 7.5, and I like that too, but I think this is actually better. All right, so that skill is like this. Can you solve, wait, that's supposed to be A, not an 8. Can you solve that? I can. I'm just going to multiply by something. Ashlyn, what do you think I'm going to multiply by?
3.
Yep. You just multiply by whatever is the denominator. So I'm timesing by 3. And 3 times and 3 divide cancel. A equals 15. Boom, done. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Here's one that looks different, but it's still the same. What? That looks totally different. Yeah. But when there's a fraction involved, multiply by the denominator, and then your life gets a lot easier. In this case, the denominator isn't the 2. The denominator isn't the 5. What's the denominator? So you times by x on both sides. And then that cancels. 2 equals 5x. You lied to me, server. It's not easy. No, it's easy. You just have one more step. Check. Yep. 2/5. Do you get, if there's a fraction, multiply by the denominator? All right. So there's 5 things on this little quiz. I've covered about 4 of them. Let me see if I can find the last one. Areas. Okay. So, do you guys remember triangles? They weren't as simple as just base times height. Do you remember what the deal was for triangles? Say this is 3 and this is 5. The answer isn't 15. Base times height, then divide by 2. Good. So half of this. So you go 5 times 3 is 15. So you go 1/2 of the 5 times the 3. And I personally like to do the 5 times 3 first and get 15 and go 1/2 of the 15. And then that's 15 over 2. Get used to writing it that way. I know that's 7.5, but you'd leave it as 15 over 2. Okay, so area of a triangle, that's super easy. Then what else do you have to know for today? Only this thing. Can you do the splits? X minus 8 equals one thing, and x minus 8 equals another thing. Go ahead and do it, solve it, and I'll be there to see if you're right. Yes?
I was wondering if we could do like multiplying 2 fractions together because it was talking about.
Absolutely. Multiplying fractions, I'll talk about that in 2 seconds. Let's just finish this one first. Kennedy, there's 2 things that x minus 8 equals. Can you tell me both of them? Okay, what's x minus 8 equal to on the first one?
48.
You're overthinking it. This number's just recopy it down there. X minus 8 is 40. And the other one? X minus 8 is, somebody say it. Negative 40. Good. That's the 2 equations you have to solve. And from there, super simple. I know you learned this in algebra, but I also know it's been a long time. From here you add 8, and that's where you get your 48. I know you were thinking about that. You gave me the final answer of 48, and you weren't wrong, but there was 2 answers. When I add 8 to both sides here, the other answer is the one that's harder, and that's negative 40 plus 8. Remember me practicing the negatives with you? Which team has more, the negatives or the positives? So then it's negative, and what do they win by? 32. So there's my 2 answers. 48 and negative 32. I get the feeling not many people had that before I said it, so I'm going to do one more. Besides, that'll be pretty much perfect time-wise. 2x minus 7, absolute value, equals 10. Now, don't be like that kid that tries to add 7 right away. You can't do that. You've got to split it into 2 equations first. You've got to do the splits. because what's in here can either be 10, or because of the bar, the absolute value bars, it could be negative 10. So it's 2x minus 7 is 10, and 2x minus 7 is negative 10. Do you get the only difference between the two equations is you put a negative on the other one? Otherwise, they're the same. It's just you throw a negative on that number at the end. Now, add 7. It's anybody can do that. And not quite yet. Teacher must like allow them to put desks together, and then stand up, and then just wait by the door, and then. Liv, tell me what to do next. What's this? Yep. What's the final answer? Yep. And then on this one, those cancel. Negative 3. Negative 3 over 2. 2 answers. You've learned everything. When you come back, we will practice it in your homework. I'll pause the video. We'll finish it up after lunch. So we just had the kids open up to the worksheet, and the first question looks like this. And I said, we are going to do the odd ones on this worksheet. We'll obviously cut it in half. Okay? And if you work hard at it, you can finish it in class pretty easy. So you might have already forgotten that you have to do the splits. X equals 10, x equals negative 10, and then almost as if by accident, you got your 2 answers. See? You split it into 2 equations that are identical, except one of them has a negative right there. Okay. In a moment, I'm going to ask you all to show me that you are in the right spot here. So get into this worksheet. It's not hard to find. There's only one worksheet under today's date. What? You're doing the odds. So number 3. Number 3. Ashlyn, could you read me number 3? Miss Hazel? Is there absolute values anywhere?
In front of the x, behind the 5.
Like that?
Yep.
Okay. So, do I split it right away? No. First, I have to get rid of the 2. Why? Because it's on the outside. Divide by 2, divide by 2. 2's gone. Now I got an absolute value equals 7. Now I do the splits. Jack Sexton, tell me, what are the 2 equations after you've done the splits?
2x plus 5 equals 14 and 2x plus 5 equals negative 14.
Nope, the 2 is gone. The 2 we divided off and it disappeared back here, see? So just inside the absolute values, isn't there just an x plus 5 in there? Okay, so then x plus 5 equals 7 and... Jack, you said it right, you just threw a 2 in front of it. So what's the other equation?
X plus 5 equals negative 7.
Yep. There we go. Quinn, what do I do to both equations to finish it off?
Subtract 5.
Subtract 5. And x equals 7 minus 5. That is that easy because it's just 7 minus 5, and that's 2. This one's more complicated. We talked about this in terms of teams. Those are both on the negative team. So they're not like comparing to see who's going to win. They're all negatives. So you just put them all together and say negative 12. Now, if you want to be sure you're right, you go back here and see, would it really work if I put in a negative 12 there? Oh, wait. There had to be a 2 in front. Sorry. Okay, and then that would have been 7, and then 2 times the 7 would have been a 14. So yay, that seems like it's working. So that's how you can check and see if you're right. All right, now we got to get down, further down where they actually want you to graph your answers. All right, so we're going to do 1, 2, skip a few. Would you find me the odd one where you gotta like, use graphs, so you got it further on the next page? There we go. What's the first odd one there? Number one, actually. Number one in that section, would you read that to me? Use the words absolute value.
X in absolute value.
X in the absolute values is
Is
less than or greater than?
is less than.
Less than
9.
9. Okay.
But it has a line.
Oh, less than or equal to 9.
Yeah.
All right. So now we have to practice this. You got to really think close here. Splits time, because the absolute value is alone. X is less than or equal to 9. You always copy exactly what you see at first. Then you always make it the opposite, but I bet somebody smart is going to figure out what I should do besides just doing the opposite of 9, which is negative 9. Say it. Switch the sign. It's going to be pointy this way. Why did the sign switch? Because we did the opposite of this number, so we got to do the opposite sign. Whenever you multiply by a negative, it's kind of like multiplying by a negative, right? Whenever you multiply by a negative, sign switches around. And I get it. That would have tripped a lot of you, but that's why I'm starting this with you. Now I want to put the answer on a number line. Because they give you a number line, so let's do that. Here's where 9 is. Here's where negative 9 would be. And it says it's less than or equal to 9. Here's 9 and less than 9. But notice I don't just keep shading forever. I kind of just see which way it's going, and then I stop, and then I go to the other one. Bigger or equal to negative 9. Here's negative 9. Could be equal to that. Could be bigger than that. And do you see that the shadings kind of meet together? And there's my answer. That means any answer between negative 9 and 9 would have worked. 0 would have worked. 1, 2, 3. A lot of things in between 0, or a lot of things between negative 9 and 9 would have worked. What about bigger than 9, like 10? Well, if you put it in a 10, you'd see it doesn't work. 10 isn't less than 9, so 10 wouldn't have worked. So there's my answer. It's a range. That's what happens when you say less than or greater than, is you get a range of answers. That's number 1, done properly. Okay. Lily, can you read me number 3 in that page?
X plus 4 is less than 5.
Is there an absolute value on it?
Oh, yes.
Absolute value of x plus 4 is what?
Less than 5.
All right. So then it's time to do the splits right off the bat, because this absolute value doesn't have anything in front of it that I got to like divide by. So I'm ready to split. I split into x plus 4 is less than 5, just like it says. You always do the first one just like it says. And then x plus 4 is greater than negative 5. This becomes negative. Because it's like you're multiplying by a negative, sign has to switch. Subtract 4, subtract 4. Draw a line. X less than 5 minus 4 is 1. X greater than, they're on the same team. Nico, what do you say the answer is if it's negative 5 and negative 4? Negative 9. Now, can you graph that? Go to negative 9. X is bigger than that. Notice I have an empty circle. I do not fill it in because it doesn't say or equal to. It just says bigger than 9. That means it can't be the negative 9. And less than 1, well, here's where 1 is in my world. And less than that means this way. And they kind of meet up together, and there's my answers between negative 9 and 1. And why didn't I fill them in? No equal signs. All right, I think you got the idea. Now, the rest of this hour is 2 things, and this is your homework. So hopefully you're going to finish one of these 2 things in class, and then you walk out of here with only 1 thing left to do. Some of you, if you're really good, might finish both. But there is a super easy Schoology quiz with 5 questions, and then there's this worksheet we're doing the odds of. Okay? If I were you, I'm started on the worksheet, I'd probably finish the worksheet. But the Schoology quiz, 5 easy questions. That's practicing the algebra you should remember from last year. So do both things. The Schoology quiz, the odds on the worksheet. Gotta admit, I did cut the worksheet in half. That should make it very doable. to go home with no more than 10 minutes of work. That Schoology quiz should take you 10 minutes or less. Okay?
It's
All right.
time.
Question?
The quiz is time.
Does it say it's timed? I will fix the timer on it then. You do not have to take it timed. If you're already taking it, it's fine. I will, when I change that there's no time limit, it'll make yours have no time limit either.
Can you make it redeemable too?
Yes, I will. All right, that's all I have for the video for today.